Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Take 10. We come to you every week with a look at a variety of mental health and related issues as they affect caregiving and carers. I'm Ron Aaron, along with our co-host, Dr. Jamie Huysman is the Chief Compassion Officer at WellMed Medical Management. He's known nationally for his work with not only addictions, but caregiving. And Carol Zernial has a master's degree in social gerontology, 30 years experience in the field. She's co-chair of the Raise Family Caregiving Advisory Council and executive director of the WellMed Charitable Foundation. And Carol, in honor of 2025, you've got a great topic.
Well, you know, all of us are celebrating a new year, and I'm a New Year's baby, so that's also my birthday. So I really feel that whole new year, impact and thinking about maybe in 2024, what if 2024 wasn't a great year? It wasn't the year that we want to repeat. So I'd like to ask Dr. Jamie, how do we have a reset or a restart or a refresh so that 2025 goes a little differently?
It's a great question. And the STAR Network at my foundation and our foundation, because we're dealing with obviously high conflict caregiving there too, we have this going on as we speak in our support groups. It's just a great topic. And by the way, happy birthday to you, Carol. It's so cool to find out you're a New Year's baby. What a great blessing it was for your parents that New Year. Well, what really was, listen, for us, what we're looking at, and here's the gig with resolutions, okay? Obviously, many of them don't happen because we start drinking from a fire hose and wanting too much in the shift and change process. So the first things we want to be is aware of our experiences in 2024 that we want to leave behind rather than where we want to go to. Because what's a resolution? Well, it's a coaching yourself to keep a promise to yourself. And that's why we want to keep it simple, because too many promises will just leave disappointment if we can't come through. So I'm going to read it real quick and I'll let you go and talk about it and we can converse about it. But to our group, we are covering 6 things. What are we leaving behind in 2024? Because that's been ourselves and it's not helpful as caregivers of anybody to keep it. And number 1 was people-pleasing habits. We're leaving that behind. Number 2 is fixing what wasn't mine to fix in this world. We're going to leave that behind. Ignoring my intuition and just going with my head, we're leaving now that behind. The next 3 was carrying uneven relationships. If we're not in relationships that are 50-50, we're going to leave those behind. Apologizing for setting boundaries. Oh no, we're going to learn that no is a complete sentence and set up boundaries. And the final one for 2024, what we're leaving behind is showing up where I am not valued. And I thought that was really cool and important. So we're about on the 3rd sort of resolution, what we're leaving behind. And the converse is obviously what we're going to bring in as a result.
Well, let me jump to the last one, showing up where I'm not valued. Expand on that. What does that mean?
Good news for a caregiver on this one. They can value themselves. And that's what Carol and I work with in terms of boomers and seniors, is that they can obviously take the oxygen first, deal with their mind, their body, their spirit. And I really suggest only counting on themselves to do that. However, there's often the fact that if caregivers aren't taking care of themselves, comfortable who they are, know who they are, nothing else matters, then they start looking at, people to satisfy them, accolades, pats on the back, long distance caregivers to say you're doing well. Well, to be honest with you, that often doesn't happen. And so we need to be very, very selective about the people we're around. And we always say at our foundation that, burnout is when one person works harder than the other. So we have to feel that we're in a place where we're valued. Somebody's bearing witness to us. Somebody's listening to us. Somebody's not bullying us. And those are the ways to really determine a relationship where I'm valued.
Well, you've got, you have such an interesting list here. I could go on, talking about any of these. You talked about uneven relationships. If we're in an uneven relationship with our care recipient, we can't necessarily leave that behind. So what's the alternative?
Oh, I agree that expectations are the seeds of resentment. That's why we try to live in the moment, do the breath work, do the Pilates, do the yoga, take care of ourselves, because we're not going to change the other person. But to the second part of what your question really goes to is expectations are the seeds of resentment. We need to not create learned helplessness in our loved one. If it's an uneven relationship, we're maybe looking at relationships in a different way. A person who we're taking care of needs to show up in their life, whether they have a chronic terminal illness, whether it's stage 1, stage 2, neurologically, and be able to show up in their own self-esteem, meaning as caregivers, okay, their relationships will be uneven, right? Like you're saying, but we have to allow our loved one to actually grow and be in this relationship and do the things necessary without creating this concept called learned helplessness and doing everything for them. So get ready for the uneven relationship, but get ready for allowing your loved one to meet you halfway, because they can do what they need to do, even if there's decompensation on the medical or behavioral side.
We'll pick this up in a moment, but first, for those of you who may have just joined us, you're listening to Take 10. I'm Ron Aaron, along with Dr. Jamie Huysman and Carol Zernial, and we're talking about reset for 2025. And Dr. Jamie, I love that you are a font of bumper stickers. Expectations are the seeds of resentment. And I think I heard you last time we did Take 10 quoting Metallica. You don't hear that in a lot of programs, so pick up from where we were on resentment, expectations, and the reset.
Well, I tell my daughter, and I'm sure we're telling our caregivers, hopefully, that you can handle bullying, you can handle long-distance caregivers, okay, telling you that that's not the right way, if you're not doing the right thing. If you actually know who you are, and to know who you are, you need to take care of your mind, your body, your soul. You may need to get a good therapist, but at the end of the day, when we say don't have expectations, Ron, it means we have to also live in the moment. So as a caregiver, we're responsible for our own stress reduction, our own emotional regulation, and to do things like breath work when we're feeling dysregulated, whatnot. We cannot have expectations. Our expectations are going to miss the mark with our caree. Okay, we never see things as they are. We see them as we are. So those expectations have to go away. And to do that, we have to more or less live in the moment. Right, Carol? Like we do at WellMed with Optum with Be Here Now. That's a neurological state, by the way.
Well, talk a little bit about people-pleasing. What it would be an example of people-pleasing behavior?
Well, I can definitely give you that one because I've been in recovery now for 32 years for codependency, and our foundation is about looking inside of ourselves of childhood issues. So we usually grew up in a household where the praise or the adulation or the pat on the back by our parents was enough, and that's what we always looked for, and it often didn't come. But in that quote unquote, we call intermittent reinforcement, sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. So later on in life, we become a hero child and we start doing things to please people instead of to being authentic in our own skin, knowing who we are and setting boundaries. So going around people pleasing is creating this world of energy vampires because we'll never be able to please anybody. I remember with my therapist, the one day I really had an aha moment many years ago was I realized that probably half the world's going to like me and half the world's not. And as soon as I did, that was a great kind of weight off of me. So to people please, it means losing ourselves in other people's adoration, pat on the backs, and it means losing ourselves and the time we need to have to be authentic and take care of ourselves and know who we are.
Which probably all of us do at some time or another, even if it's the person that we're taking care of.
Absolutely.
Again, that goes back to your expectations. So always trying to make them happy, and that's probably impossible.
Absolutely. Carol, I'm not the Buddha on this one. And I say progress is 3 forward, 2 backwards. We just need to catch ourselves when we're actually just doing everything to make the other person happy and losing ourselves in the process and trying to get them to really like us and like what we're doing. We can do that. When we do slip into it, I slip into it. It's called survival mode. But at some point in time, we have to look at what we're doing and realize we need that time. We need to feed ourselves. And to be frank with you, if you got a loved one who has a chronic terminal or acute illness, they've got fear, they're kind of unsteady. If we're not knowing who we are and taking care of ourselves, they're going to feel more insecure in our own presence. So it's almost, I call it a prescription for caregivers to be on 2 feet, not on one. Hang with yourself. Don't try to people please. And your loved one will feel safer in the whole process.
Good place to end this. Thank you, Dr. Jamie. Thank you, Carol Zernial. I'm Ron Aaron. You've been listening to Take 10.